There are lots of major honours to go for if you're a top-tier WWE superstar. From winning the Royal Rumble or being crowned King of the Ring to winning a world title or being emasculated on screen by Stephanie McMahon, there are many ways to help cement your legacy in sports entertainment. Of all the honours, however, the one that is still most coveted is headlining WrestleMania. Now, we can argue all day long about what a main event actually is, and yes, I think more people were into Rock Hogan than Jericho Triple H, but the fact is that Y2J in the game went on last because that was deemed the most important match on the night and the one that needed to close the show. I'm not necessarily saying it's right, but wrestlers, management, and fans all place more importance on receiving tippy-top billing and being the final match that fans see. It can backfire, of course, especially when the show runs about 17 hours, including the pre-show, and not everyone is equipped to carry the load. Not that everyone gets the chance, however, even those that truly quote-unquote deserve the opportunity. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 deserving WWE stars who never main evented WrestleMania. Join us. Number 10, Dean Ambrose. Though WWE insisted for years in forging ahead with the plan and pushing Roman Reigns above all others, his Shield brothers Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose were often more popular than the big dog, and could have been positioned in WrestleMania main events instead of, or perhaps against, the big dog. The Lunatic Fringe had mixed fortunes at the showcase of the Immortals, the highlight probably being the paycheck that accompanied his underwhelming loss to Brock Lesnar at Mania 32, and the lowlight being left off the show in 2019 as his contract was due to expire and WWE opted not to book him. That year, the plan was for Ambrose to meet Reigns for the Universal title in one of the main events, but Roman's diagnosis, Dean's decision to leave, and Brock's love of money and agreement to stick around for the show put paid to that. Another opportunity for Ambrose could have been against Triple H at Mania 32. The two had a cracking match a few weeks before the show at Roadblock, and Dean was wildly popular at the time, but once again, the plan had to be adhered to, and nobody other than Reigns was walking out of that bad boy with the title. Number 9, Jimmy Snuka. Had WrestleMania taken place before 1985, Jimmy Snuka might well have found himself wrestling in its main event. The top star in WWE during the pre-Hulkamania days, Superfly was Vince McMahon's go-to babyface and a man who headlined countless shows up and down the US. Snuka was still a big star come the first showcase of the Immortals and actually was present for the main event, accompanying his successor and Mr. T for their match against Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. But his star had diminished by that point and he couldn't compete with the red and yellow wave that was washing over the company at the time. He left WWE not too long after the first WrestleMania, and when he returned years later, it was strictly as a mid-card act. His WrestleMania resume is far from stellar, losing to Rick Rude at 6 and having the distinction of becoming the first victim of The Undertaker's streak at 7. His last WrestleMania match came as part of the Legends team in a handicap match against Chris Jericho at Mania 25. If Vince had decided to roll the dice in 82 or 83, the first WrestleMania may have been Snuka going up against a Bob Backlund or Don Morocco, and that is a thought that chills this fan to his very core. Number 8, Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus had the honour of appearing at a WrestleMania after only being on television for about a fortnight. Accompanying Test and Albert into battle with, head cheese, Trish's appearance was more memorable than anything in that car crash of a match. She made an impression the following year, gaining revenge on Stephanie and Vince McMahon during the chairman's street fight with Shane, but it took her until 2002 to have a Mania match of her own. She competed in triple threats at Manias 18 and 19, winning the women's title in the latter. At 20, she was back in the manager role, this time turning on Chris Jericho and aligning with Christian, while at 21, Stratus was tasked with defending her women's title against Christy Hemme in a match that was more to promote the Divas Search winner's Playboy pictorial than spotlight the champ. The next year, Trish had her biggest and to date best WrestleMania match and moment, sorry Snooki, when she dropped the title to Mickie James in the blow-off to a feud that had been simmering for many months. Look, in that era, there was no way that Stratus was going to close the show ahead of the likes of The Undertaker, John Cena and Triple H, but if she were in her prime and on the active roster today, there's every chance that she would get the opportunity to do what Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch and Charlotte have all done in recent times. Number 7, Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy has been part of many incredible WrestleMania moments. The swanton off the very tall ladder at WrestleMania 16, the spear at 17, the leg drop at 23, the return at 33. Yes, wherever the charismatic enigma and very tall heights are involved, you can bet that something special is going to happen, especially at the granddaddy of them all. Those all came in tag matches, and while his team with brother Matt is legendary, it shouldn't be forgotten that at one time, Jeff was one of the most popular singles stars in the industry. He won the WWE title in late 2008 at the height of the adoration, and could have justifiably held the strap until WrestleMania 25, possibly defending it against Edge or his own flesh and blood. He did meet Matt on that show, but it wasn't for the title and certainly didn't go on last. On that same show, the Rated R superstar defended the gold against John Cena and Big Show in a decent match, but one that didn't linger long in the memory. Considering the popularity of the rainbow-haired warrior and the role that Edge was on at the time, those two clashing in a WWE title match could have easily closed the show. I mean, it would have robbed us of the amazing Triple H Randy Orton spectacle and all, but that's a small price to pay now, isn't it? Number 6, Diesel. The new generation era is fondly remembered for, above almost everything else, the emergence of super workers like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. But it shouldn't be forgotten that a lot of that time period was powered by Diesel. Honk honk. Big sexy Kevin Nash, the big sexy truck himself, enjoyed a considerable WWE title reign during this time and was positioned as the guy, the company being built around him as much, if not more than, HBK or the Hitman. Despite that, Big Daddy Cool didn't get the opportunity to headline a WrestleMania. He successfully defended the title against Michaels at WrestleMania 11, though that bout played second fiddle to Lawrence Taylor's publicity-grabbing match with Bam Bam Bigelow. The next year, it was the Bret and Shawn show, with the two going for an hour in an Iron Man match, while Nash once more enjoyed the semi-main spot, losing to The Undertaker. And that was it for Nash at WrestleMania, because he was off to WCW after that, and when he returned, it was just to accompany NWO pal Scott Hall for his match with Stone Cold. Torn quads and expired contracts meant that Nash, despite having a long and illustrious career, only danced at the Showcase of the Immortals on 2 occasions, and neither of them were the last dance. Number 5, Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero's exploits at WrestleMania are inconsistent to say the least. In his first, he teamed up with his Radical mates to lose to China and Too Cool, with Latino Heat himself tasting the pin at the hands of the 9th wonder of the world. The next year, he was somewhat lost in the shuffle as part of the massive WrestleMania X7, though he did bag the European title in a decent match with Test. He wasn't on the roster the next year, and in 2003 was in another mid-card tussle, teaming with his nephew Chavo in a triple threat tag team title match. It was in 2004 that Guerrero finally had the chance to show what he could do on the grandest stage, contesting a thriller with Kurt Angle and retaining his WWE title in front of a sold-out Madison Square Garden, before coming out at the end of the show for an emotional embrace with best friend and new World Heavyweight Champion Chris Benoit. He slid down the card a year earlier and opened the show with tag team champion partner Rey Mysterio in what would be his last WrestleMania. Really, the only times Eddie could have headlined were in 04 and 05, and that would have required vastly different circumstances. If anyone deserved it based on talent alone, however, it was Guerrero. Number 4, Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio is another talented performer with a checkered WrestleMania history, but one with more good moments than bad. His debut at 19 challenging Matt Hardy for the Cruiserweight title was short but sweet, as was his inclusion in the Cruiserweight Open the year after. His opener with Eddie in 05 hinted that WWE had bigger plans in store for the Masked Man, though nobody could have guessed just how big. Following Eddie's passing, Rey went on a strong run that included winning the Royal Rumble before going on to win the World Heavyweight title at Mania 22. He missed out in 2007 and 2008 through injury before retiring JBL and winning the IC title at Mania 25. From there, it's mostly been a mixed bag of mid-card outings, but there was a time when Rey was on fire and over enough to have justifiably been in the main event of the biggest show of the year. His 2006 title-winning triumph would have been the best bet, but nothing was preventing John Cena from going on last that year. Mysterio has had an incredible career and has just about done it all, but he hasn't main evented WrestleMania, so really, is he actually as good as King Kong Bundy? Makes you wonder. Number 3, Kane. One of the great things about Kane was his adaptability and the fact that whatever WWE asked him to do, he could pretty much always do it and do it well. That is something that is reflected in his eclectic selection of WrestleMania matches. Grudge match with The Undertaker, hardcore triple threat, stick him in the Money in the Bank, singles matches with Kurt Angle, Triple H, Randy Orton, or even the Great Khali. The Big Red Machine could be put in just about any spot, and more often than not, he would do the job well. The one place he never found himself, however, was in the WrestleMania main event. If that was ever really going to happen, it would have had to have been as the opponent for The Undertaker, returning to his old gimmick at WrestleMania 20. But with two major title matches on the bill, the Big Red Machine and the Phenom had to settle for being the match in the middle. Kane could have also have been a solid addition to the WrestleMania 2000 main event, and would have been a good plan B had Mick Foley not been able to do it. As it is, Kane can be content with his role as Pete Rose's tormentor, a strange but obviously very important role. Number 2, CM Punk. When CM Punk left WWE in 2014 and began talking about things that had disgruntled him about his time there, one of the things that came up was the fact that he never headlined WrestleMania. The straight-edge superstar felt as though he deserved the distinction and, well, it's hard to argue with him. Punk had some great WrestleMania moments, to be fair, winning the Money in the Bank ladder matches at consecutive events, while also wrestling the likes of Rey Mysterio, Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, and The Undertaker on the grandest stage. Those were all prime spots to have, but Punk wanted more, and on at least a couple of occasions, maybe should have closed the show. The first was WrestleMania 27 in 2011, when he was the leader of the New Nexus and one of the top heels in the company, a match with future rival John Cena and interesting box office prospects. However, WWE went with Miz instead, lol, which stuck in Phil's craw. A couple of years later, at Mania 29, Punk could have also been in the mix with either Cena, The Rock, or perhaps both, but had to settle for being the last victim of the streak instead. Lucky him. Number 1, Ric Flair. Had Ric Flair been a WWE contracted talent in the 1980s or for more of the 90s, odds are that he would have some point headlined WrestleMania. But the Nature Boy was a WCW guy, save for a brief foray into the world of Titan Sports, which led to Flair winning the WWE title in the 92 Royal Rumble before dropping it to Randy Savage at WrestleMania 8. It was scheduled to be the big Flair-Hogan dream match until plans changed and Slick Rick found himself bumped down the card to make way at the top for the Hulkster and Sid. His next Mania appearance came a full decade later, losing to The Undertaker at WrestleMania 18. Following that, he teamed with his Evolution pals to see off the Rock and Sock connection, competed in the Money in the Bank match, was bumped to the pre-show one year, and finally got his big send-off in the career-threatening match against Shawn Michaels. Could Flair Michaels have gone on last, considering the emotion involved and the historic nature of the occasion? Personally, I'd wager double the amount of Flair's alimony payments that it could, but it was not to be, and the Nature Boy saw out his unparalleled career, having done just about everything else but main headline a WrestleMania. Rumour has it that he was the last man standing at the bar during the after-party, mind, and isn't that the real WrestleMania main event? Woo!